My spy has eyes on you, and still you think distance has made you invisible. You forget who I am. You forget what it means to be loved by a man who commands shadows. I know where you walk when the sun begins to die. I know the way your fingers hesitate before touching the cold iron gates. And what you don't see is how every breath you take has become a message delivered to me. You tried to vanish. You tried to become a ghost in a world that once bent its knees to your presence. But ghosts do not haunt kings. Kings summon them. And still, I let you believe you escaped. Because obsession is not pursuit. It is patience sharpened into a blade. Do you feel it? That quiet unease when the wind lingers too long against your neck? That moment when silence grows too heavy, as if it listens back? That is me. That's is not behind you, but everywhere your thoughts dare to wander. You were never meant to run from me. You were meant to understand me. And what you don't understand yet is that I never needed chains to keep you. Not when your heart learned my name like a prayer. It cannot forget.
Tell me.
When you close your eyes, do you still see the throne room bathed in gold? Do you still feel the weight of my gaze before you ever dared to look up? Because I do. And the baby guess I'm addicted to, and every shadow stretched across marble floors. I hear you in every silence between court whispers. And still you wrong. But you never ask the only question that matters. Did I let you go? Or did I simply let you believe you could leave? You remember the night the desert wind softened, don't you? You stood beneath the balcony, wrapped in silence too fragile to break. And what you don't admit is that you were never afraid of me. You were afraid of how easily you understood me. The court saw a prince forged in war, a ruler shaped by blood and strategy. But you saw the fractures beneath the crown. You saw the way my hand lingered too long on the throne's edge. You saw the hesitation no one else dared to notice. And still, you stayed, not because you were weak, but because you knew something no one else did. That power is lonelier than exile. You remember how close you stood? Close enough to hear the storm beneath my breath. Close enough to feel the war I never spoke aloud. And what you don't realize is that you became the only place where that war went quiet. You were never meant to be part of this empire. You were never meant to understand its cruelty. But you did. You understood why I could not choose mercy. Why I could not bend, even when I wanted to. And still, you looked at me as if I could. That was your rebellion, not defiance, not escape. Belief. You believed I could be more than the man carved into stone by duty. And for a moment, I almost became him. Do you see it now? You were never just someone I loved. You were the only proof that I was not entirely lost to the throne. And what you don't say is that you felt it too. That quiet, dangerous truth that we did not find each other by accident. We collided because the world was never meant to hold us both safely. The court whispers your name like a forbidden spell. Do you hear them even now? No, of course you don't. You left before their voices could reach you. But I remain. And what you don't see is how your absence became louder than any accusation. They speak of betrayal. They speak of weakness. They speak of a prince undone by a woman who vanished into silence. And still I let them speak, because silence is more dangerous than truth. Do you understand what you became the moment you left? Not a memory, not a loss, a threat. Not because of what you did, but because of what you know. You have seen the throne without its illusion. You have seen the man beneath the crown, and what the empire cannot control, it seeks to erase. They watch me constantly now. They watch me constantly now. Your existence rewritten into nothing. But I have done something far more dangerous. I have protected you ruthlessly. Watch Messi. Do you feel safe where you are? You shouldn't. Because safety in my world is never real. Every step you take is allowed. Every breath you draw is permitted. And what you don't understand is how many lives have been traded to keep it that way. I have silenced men who spoke too much. I have broken alliances that reach too far. For you, we believe you escaped the palace. No, palace followed you. It stretches across borders, across shadows, across fate itself. No, you understand that it's simple. Holding back the storm that would consume you. But storms do not wait forever, and neither do kings. Do you hate me for it? For the things I've done in your name, without your consent, without your knowing? You should, because what I've become cannot be forgiven. What you don't understand is this. Love in my world is not gentle. It is not soft hands and whispered promises. It is not safety. It is sacrifice sharpened into something unrecognizable. You wanted a man who could choose you, but I am not a man who chooses. Maybe YouTuber Nedamandi for this Japitini compass. I am a man who takes, who conquers, who decides the fate of empires with a single breath. And yet, when it came to you, I hesitated. Do you see the cruelty of that? The one moment I chose to be less than a king was the moment I lost you, and still I refused to lose you completely. So I became what you fear, not for power, not for glory, but control. Control over every path that could lead danger to you. Control over every whisper that could turn into a blade. And what you don't realize is how much of myself I buried to make that possible. The man you believed in, the man who almost chose you. He exists only in the space you left behind. Every other version of me belongs to the throne. And still, I gouge you. Walk for it, not because you asked, but because I cannot exist in a world where you do not call it obsession, call it tyranny. It does not matter, because in the end, it is the only way I know how to love you. Distance. You think this ends with distance. You think time will dull what we were. You think forgetting is a mercy. It isn't. And what you don't see is how every path you walk bends back toward me. Not by chance, by design. You can build a new life. You can change your name. You can bury every memory beneath years that refuse to speak of me. And still, you will feel it. That quiet pull, that invisible thread tightening with every step you take away. Because some things are not meant to be escaped. They watch me constantly now. Do you remember what I told you once? That the desert remembers every footprint, that nothing truly disappears beneath the sand. You are my footprint. I am the stone that refuses to let you fade. What you don't understand is that I am not waiting for you to return. I am waiting for the moment you realize you never truly left.
The life we said sheep.
It's not end. It transforms. It evolves. It becomes something far more dangerous than either of us ever intended. And still, I watch. Not as a king, not as a ruler, but as the only man who has ever known you completely. My spy has eyes on you. But now you understand, don't you? It was never about the spy. It was always about me. Watching. Loving you from a distance, you will never escape. And now you start to feel it, don't you? Not fear, not yet. Something quieter, something far more dangerous, recognition. Because what you don't admit even to yourself is that a part of you was always waiting for me to speak again. You told yourself it was over. You told yourself the silence meant freedom. And still you listened for it. That invisible echo of my voice threading through your thoughts. You tried to replace it with noise, with distance, with strangers who do not know the weight of your silence. But none of them understand the way you fall quiet before speaking. None of them notice the way your eyes search shadows before trusting light. I do. I always did. And what you don't realize is that you never truly learned how to exist without being seen by me. That is the cruelty of us. Not love, not loss, but awareness. I made you visible to yourself in a way no one else ever could. And once seen, you cannot return to being unseen. Tell me, when you laugh now, does it feel complete? Or does it falter for a fraction of a second, as if something is missing that cannot be named? That absence is where I remain, not as a memory, not as regret, but as something unfinished. Because what we were was never given the chance to end. It was interrupted, torn apart by forces neither of us chose. And still, unfinished things do not fade. They linger, they demand, they return. And I have returned to you now, not in body, not in presence, but in truth, the truth you tried to outrun. You were never escaping me. You were escaping what we could become, and that is something even I could not allow. Those are nights in the palace when even power feels like a prison, when the torches burn low and the marble halls echo too loudly with absence. And what you don't see is how often that absence carries your shape. The throne remains beneath me, unyielding, absolute. The empire still breathes at my command, but there is a fracture now, small, invisible, but growing. You left it there, not as a wound, as a question. What if I had chosen differently? What if I had stepped down from the weight of the crown just once and followed you into the unknown? Dangerous thoughts, treasonous even, and still they return, because you were the only moment in my life that was not decided before it began. You were chaos, you were uncertainty, and I, who controls everything, found myself undone by something I could not predict. Do you understand the magnitude of that? Empires fall for less, kings are destroyed for weaker flaws, and yet I let you become mine, not by decree, not by force, but by something far more fragile, choice. And what you don't realize is that I have never forgiven myself for letting that choice slip through my hands. The court believes I am unshaken, unmoved, eternal, but they do not see the moments when my gaze drifts to empty corridors, expecting to find you where you no longer stand. They do not hear the silence that follows when I remember you are no longer here to break it. And still, I remain, because a king does not abandon his throne, even when his heart has already abandoned him. You once asked me if I feared anything. Do you remember? You asked it softly, as if the question itself might shatter something fragile between us. And I told you no. I told you fear was a weakness I could not afford. That was the truth I gave the world, but not the truth I gave you. Because what you don't know is that I feared only one thing, not war, not betrayal, not death. You, not your power, not your defiance, but your ability to see me completely, without illusion, without reverence, without fear. You stripped the crown from my existence without ever touching it, and still you remained. That was your greatest danger, not to the empire, to me, because a man who is seen cannot hide behind what he has become. He must confront it, and I was not ready. So I chose the only path I knew. I let the crown devour the man you loved. I let the empire silence the truth you carried. And in doing so, I lost the only person who ever understood why I could not be saved. Do you see it now? This was never a story of power. It was a story of fear. My fear. And what you don't realize is that everything I have done since you left has been an attempt to outrun it, to bury it beneath control, beneath order, beneath absolute rule. But fear does not disappear. It waits, it watches, and when the silence is deep enough, it speaks. Just like I am speaking to you now. If I called you back, would you come? No, you wouldn't. And that is why I have never asked. Because what you don't understand is that I do not want your return if it is born from command. I do not want obedience. I do not want submission. I want the one thing I can never have again, your choice. Freely given, without fear, without obligation. And still, I know the truth. That choice no longer exists. Not for you, not for me. We have both become prisoners of what we were. You running from it, me ruling within it. And somewhere between us, the truth remains untouched. That we were never meant to survive each other. Tell me if I stood before you now, not as a prince, not as a king, but simply as the man you once believed in. Would you recognize me, or have I become something too distant, too altered, too lost to ever return? And what you don't say is that you fear the answer. Because if you still recognize me, then you never truly left. And if you don't, then everything we were has already died. Both truths are unbearable, and still, one of them is real. I wonder which one keeps you awake at night. So, this is where we remain, not together, not apart, suspended in something that refuses to end. And what you don't see is that this was always inevitable, not because we failed, but because we were never meant to be simple. We were never meant to be easy. We were never meant to survive the weight of what we carried. You, with your impossible belief in what I could become. Me, with my unyielding duty to what I must remain. And still, we collided again and again until there was nothing left but this distance, memory, and something that refuses to die. My spy has eyes on you. You hear it differently now, don't you? Not as a threat, not as control, but as confession. Because the truth I never spoke is the one that has followed you across every mile, every silence, every attempt to forget. I never stopped watching because I never stopped belonging to the part of me that chose you. And what you don't understand is that no empire, no crown, no fate could ever change that. So go, continue your life, build your world far from mine, pretend this voice does not follow you into the quiet moments where truth cannot be hidden. And still, you will feel it. Not my power, not my reach, me, always me, watching not to control you, but because even now, you are the only thing I have ever truly seen. You thought silence would weaken us, didn't you? That time would erode whatever still binds us. And still, here you are, hearing me as if I never stopped speaking. Because what you don't understand is that silence does not erase truth. It preserves it, it sharpens it, it turns it into something that waits, patient and unrelenting. I gave you silence not as freedom, but as distance. Distance to see if you would forget me. Distance to see if I could forget you. And we both failed. Do you feel it now? That quiet certainty that no matter how far you go, there is something unfinished pulling you back? That is not fate. That is consequence. You and I, we crossed a line neither of us fully understood at the time. And now, every step forward only deepens the echo of what we left behind. I have seen wars end. I have seen kingdoms fall into dust. But nothing lingers like something that was never allowed to reach its end. That is what we are. Not a memory, not a mistake, a continuation denied its conclusion. And what you don't realize is how dangerous that makes us. Because unfinished things do not rest. They evolve. They demand resolution. And I have begun to wonder if the world itself will force us to find it. There are movements within the empire you cannot see, subtle shifts, quiet alignments, and still they all circle back to one truth. Your name has not disappeared, it has spread, not loudly, not recklessly, but carefully, like a secret meant only for those who know how to listen. And what you don't see is how many eyes now follow you that do not belong to me. This is where control begins to fracture. This is where protection becomes something far more complicated because I am no longer the only one who understands your importance. You have become a question the empire cannot ignore. Why did you leave? What did you take with you? What did you see that made you walk away from a prince who commands everything? Dangerous questions, questions that turn into suspicion, and suspicion turns into action. I have delayed it, I have redirected it, I have buried it beneath politics and war, but it is rising again, slowly, inevitably, and what you don't realize is that the closer they come to the truth, the less I will be able to protect you from it. This is no longer about us, this is about survival, yours, and perhaps mine as well. If the moment comes, and it will, you will have a choice to make. Not the kind you made before, not one built on emotion or hope, a real choice, one that will define everything that follows. You can keep running. You can disappear deeper into a life that pretends I never existed, and still they will find you. Or you can do the one thing neither of us ever truly dared to consider. You can return, not to me, not to what we were, but to the truth of what we became. And what you don't understand is that your return would not be a reunion, it would be a reckoning. The court would not welcome you. The empire would not forgive you, and I would not be the man you left behind, but you would no longer be alone. And perhaps that is the only thing that still matters, because whatever happens next cannot be faced in fragments. It must be faced whole, together or not at all. Do you see how this changes everything? This is no longer a story of longing whispered across distance. This is no longer about what we feel. It is about what we are forced to become. And still, beneath all of it, something remains unchanged. I have not stopped watching you, not out of control, not out of power, but because I am waiting, waiting to see which path you choose when the illusion of escape finally breaks. Because it will break. It always does. The world does not allow something like us to simply fade into nothing. It demands consequence. It demands resolution. And what you don't realize is that I am preparing for both outcomes. If you run, I will ensure you survive as long as possible. If you return, I will ensure you survive what comes after. That is the extent of what I can give you now. Not promises, not safety, only survival. And still, part of me wonders if that was always what you needed from me. Not love, not devotion, but truth. Cold, unforgiving, absolute. One picture. So this is where I leave you for now. Not with an ending, not with an answer, but with a certainty you can no longer ignore. You were never just a woman who walked away from a prince. You were a fracture that revealed everything beneath the crown. And fractures do not simply disappear, they spread. They reshape what was once unbreakable, and still I remain on this throne, holding together an empire that no longer feels as absolute as it once did. Because somewhere beyond these walls, you exist, untouched, unclaimed, uncontrolled. And that is something even I cannot command. My spy has eyes on you. You remember how this began. You understand now what it truly meant. Not surveillance, not possession, but connection. A thread that neither distance nor time has been able to sever. And what you don't understand is that this is not the end of that thread. It is only the moment before it tightens again. So go on. Keep moving forward. Keep believing this distance will protect you. And still, when the moment comes, when the world closes in and the truth can no longer be avoided, you will hear me again. Not as a whisper, not as a memory, but as something far more real, because I am not finished with you. And perhaps you are not finished with me either. You feel the shift already, don't you? The world around you no longer moves the same way. Conversations pause a second too long. Strangers look at you as if they almost recognize something they should not. And still, you try to convince yourself it is nothing. But what you don't see is how patterns form long before they reveal their purpose. This is how empires move, quietly, invisibly, until there is no space left untouched. I warned you without warning. I protected you without permission. And now I can feel the edges of that protection beginning to fracture. Not from weakness, from inevitability. Because once a secret becomes valuable enough, it stops being hidden. It starts being hunted. Tell me, when was the last time you truly felt alone? Not just physically, but completely, undeniably unseen. You cannot remember, can you? Because even in your solitude, something has always been watching. Not always me, not anymore. And that is what should terrify you. Because I know how this ends when control slips. I have written those endings myself. I have watched names vanish, histories erased, lives rewritten as if they never existed, and still, I refuse to let that happen to you. But refusal is not power, not forever. And what you don't understand is that I am reaching the limits of what even I can hold back. There is a question I have never asked you, not because I did not want the answer, but because I already feared it. If I had come for you sooner, would you have stayed? Not for the throne, not for the empire, but for me. And still, I do not ask it because the past is the one thing even I cannot command. It remains untouched by power, immune to decree, and yet it defines everything that follows. You left because you saw truth. I stayed because I was bound to it. That was the difference between us. You could walk away from what you understood, I could not. And what you don't realize is that this difference has shaped every moment since. You became something fluid, unbound, free to change, to grow, to become someone beyond what the palace ever allowed, while I remained fixed, immovable, a constant in a world that demands evolution. Do you see the irony? The king who controls everything cannot change. The woman who had nothing became everything unpredictable. And still, our paths refuse to fully separate. They bend, they circle, they move in ways that defy reason, as if something beyond both of us refuses to let this end. The court grows restless. I can feel it in the way their voices sharpen, in the way their loyalty begins to shift from devotion to calculation. They sense it. Not you, not yet, but something, a weakness, a fracture, a distraction. And what you don't see is how dangerous perception alone can become. They do not need proof, they only need suspicion, and suspicion has begun to gather around me, around decisions I have made, around absences I have allowed, around you. This is the cost of what we were, not immediate destruction, something slower, something more insidious, erosion. Piece by piece, certainty begins to crumble, authority begins to question itself, and still I stand firm because I must, because if I falter even once, everything collapses, not just the throne, not just the empire, but the fragile distance that still protects you. Do you understand now? Your existence is no longer separate from mine. It is tied to it. Every threat that moves toward me moves toward you. Every doubt cast upon me casts a shadow over you. And what you don't realize is how close those shadows are beginning to reach. If it comes to it, I will not hesitate. You know that about me. You always did. I would choose the empire if I must. I will protect it, preserve it, even if it demands sacrifices that cannot be undone. And still, there is a truth beneath that truth, one I have never spoken aloud. If the choice is between losing the empire and losing you completely, I do not know what I will do. That uncertainty is the most dangerous thing about me now, not my power, not my reach, but the possibility that I might choose differently, that I might break the very thing I have spent my life becoming. And what you don't understand is that such a choice would not save us. It would destroy everything, including you. Because a king who abandons his throne does not become free. He becomes a target, a symbol, a man to be erased, and anyone tied to him shares that fate. This is why I have remained where I am, not out of duty alone, but because it is the only position from which I can still protect you, even if that protection comes at the cost of everything else. So now you stand at the edge of something neither of us can fully see. The world tightening, the distance shrinking, the illusion of escape dissolving piece by piece. And still, you have not made your choice. Perhaps you are waiting. Perhaps you believe there is still time. But what you don't realize is that time has already begun to close around you. It always does, slowly, quietly, until there is no path left that does not lead back to the truth. My spy has eyes on you. It sounds different now, doesn't it? Heavier. Not a beginning, not even a warning, but a constant. A truth that has followed you through every attempt to leave it behind. And still, you breathe. You move. You continue as if this moment has not already been set in motion. But I know better. I have seen how these stories unfold. I have written their endings. And what you don't understand is that this one has never been fully in my control. Not from the moment you first stood before me, not from the moment you chose to see me as something more than a crown. This, whatever this is, has always been something else, something beyond power, beyond choice, beyond even us, and it is coming. It begins in ways no one notices at first. A message that never arrives, a name spoken too carefully, a silence where there should have been noise. And still, the world pretends nothing has changed. But what you don't see is how these small fractures always come before something larger breaks. I have seen it before, the quiet before collapse, the stillness before a throne is questioned. And now I see it again, threading its way toward you, not loudly, not violently, but with intention. You are no longer hidden in the spaces between attention, you are becoming its center. Do you feel it? That sense that something is aligning, slowly, deliberately, as if every step you take is leading you somewhere you never chose. That is not coincidence, that is design. And I am no longer the only one who understands its shape. There are forces moving now that do not answer to me. Old powers, old loyalties, the kind that existed before I ever wore this crown. And what you don't realize is that they are not interested in what you were to me. They are interested in what you represent. A weakness, a possibility, a fracture that could be used to unravel everything. And still, I stand between them and you for now. I could end this, you know that, don't you? I could give the order one command, spoken without hesitation, and your name would vanish from every record, every memory that dares to hold it. You would become nothing, untouchable, not because you are protected, but because you no longer exist. That is the kind of power I hold, absolute, final, and still. I have never used it against you, because what you don't understand is that erasing you would mean erasing the only truth I have ever known. You are not my weakness, you are my clarity, the one thing that has never been shaped by fear, by duty, by expectation, and that is something I cannot destroy, not even to save everything else. Do you see the contradiction? The king who would sacrifice anything for his empire cannot sacrifice you. And that is why this is spiraling beyond control, because power without absolute choice is no longer absolute. And the moment that truth becomes visible, everything changes. They are watching me now, not openly, not yet, but I can feel it in the way their loyalty has begun to sharpen into something colder, measured, calculated. They are waiting for a sign, a mistake, a moment of hesitation that proves what they already suspect. And what you don't see is how close I am to giving it to them, not through weakness, through you. Every decision I make now carries your shadow. Every silence I allow is shaped by the need to keep you beyond their reach. And that is not something a king is permitted to have. A ruler must be singular, unattached, untouchable. But I am none of those things anymore. Not completely. And they know it. They can feel it, like wolves sensing a fracture in the armor of something they once feared. And still, I refuse to become what they expect. Because the moment I do, the moment I sever this connection to you, I become exactly what the crown demands. Empty, unquestioned, absolute. And that is a fate I have begun to understand is worse than any rebellion they could bring against me. So the moment approaches. I can see its outline now, even if you cannot. The convergence of everything we tried to keep apart. You moving forward. Believing distance is still protection. Me holding the line. Pretending control is still enough. And between us, forces neither of us can command are drawing closer with every passing breath. When it happens, there will be no warning, no time to prepare. Just a single moment where everything shifts. and the truth can no longer be avoided. You will be seen fully, irrevocably. And what you don't understand is that once that happens, there is no return to what you are now. No quiet life, no hidden existence, only choice. The one you have been avoiding since the beginning. And still, I wonder if you already feel it. That pull growing stronger. That sense that something is about to break through the surface of everything you have tried to build. Because it is. And when it does, I will be there, not as a whisper, not as a shadow, but as something you can no longer ignore. This is no longer about watching. This is no longer about distance. This is the final threshold before everything changes. My spy has eyes on you. It began as a quiet truth, a presence you could almost dismiss. But now you hear it for what it has always been, a promise, not of control, not of possession, but of inevitability. Because no matter how far you go, no matter how deeply you try to bury what we were, it has always been leading here, to this edge, this moment, this choice. And what you don't understand is that I am no longer the only one waiting for it. The empire waits, the court waits, the forces beyond both of us wait. And still, so do I. Not as your ruler, not as your captor, but as the man who has followed you through every silence, every absence, every attempt to forget. So when it happens, when the world finally closes in and the truth stands before you with no place left to hide, you will hear me again, not as a memory, not as an echo, but as something undeniable. Because this was never a story that could end in distance. It was always a story that would demand return.